Working as a waitress on a cruise ship, the woman was shocked to notice that the millionaire in front of her was her husband, who had died 7 years ago. The ending is surprising. Before clicking subscribe to learn more exciting stories like this and avoid 10 years of bad luck in love, the morning sun filtered through the white gauze curtains, bathing the room in a warm golden light. Lucy Morgan, a 28-year-old woman with hazel eyes and wavy brown hair, woke up with a smile on her lips. Her hand instinctively slid to her belly, caressing the small bump that was beginning to form. She was pregnant with twins, news that had filled her heart with joy, and that of her husband, Alex, with indescribable excitement. "Good morning, my loves," Lucy whispered, talking to her babies as she slowly sat up in bed. The empty space beside her reminded her that Alex had left early that morning for a business trip. He was a successful businessman, always busy with new projects and important meetings. Lucy got up and headed to the kitchen to prepare a nutritious breakfast. As she cut fresh fruit, her mind wandered to the plans she and Alex had made for the future. A bigger house in the suburbs, a garden where the children could play, maybe even a dog. Everything seemed perfect, like a dream come true. The ringing of the phone interrupted her thoughts. Lucy approached the device, wiping her hands on her apron. "Hello," she answered, expecting to hear Alex's voice, but it wasn't him. The voice on the other end of the line was deep, official. "Am I speaking with Mrs. Lucy Morgan?" "Yes, this is she," she replied, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Mrs. Morgan, I'm calling from the California Highway Patrol. I regret to inform you that there has been an accident on the highway." The following words became a buzz in Lucy's ears. Phrases like wrecked car, intense fire, and no survivors found penetrated the fog of disbelief that was beginning to envelop her. "No, it can't be," Lucy murmured, her hand gripping the phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "There must be a mistake. My husband, Alex—" "I'm very sorry, Mom," said the voice on the other end of the line. "We need you to come and identify some personal items we've recovered from the accident site." Lucy dropped the phone, her legs giving way beneath her. She slid to the floor, her back against the wall, as tears began to spring from her eyes. Her hands trembled as she placed them on her belly, as if wanting to protect her babies from the terrible news. "No, please, no," she sobbed, her voice barely a whisper. "Alex, you can't leave us like this." The world she had built with so much love and care was crumbling around her. The dreams of a happy family, of raising her children alongside the man she loved, were vanishing like the smoke from the accident that had supposedly taken Alex's life. As the sun continued to shine cheerfully outside, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding inside the house, Lucy remained there on her kitchen floor, crying inconsolably. She didn't know how she was going to face a future without Alex, how she was going to raise 2 children on her own. What Lucy couldn't imagine at that moment of deep sorrow was that this was only the beginning of a series of events that would test her strength, her love, and her capacity to forgive. Fate had surprises in store for her that would challenge everything she thought she knew about her life and her marriage. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, on a lonely highway, the smoldering remains of a car cooled under the morning sun. And somewhere, far from there, a man who looked very much like Alex Morgan looked out the window of an airplane with an expression of determination and something else in his eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or maybe the glimmer of a new beginning. 7 years had passed since that fateful day when Lucy received news of Alex's supposed accident. Time, which they say heals all wounds, had left its marks on Lucy's face. Her eyes, once bright with happiness, now reflected a mixture of determination and weariness. In the modest apartment she now called home, Lucy prepared breakfast for her children, Sophie and Matt, 2 6-year-old kids so alike and yet so different. Sophie, with her brown curls and hazel eyes, was the spitting image of her mother. Matt, on the other hand, had his father's straight, dark hair, with green eyes that sometimes made Lucy's heart clench. "Mom, are you working late today?" Sophie asked as she nibbled on a piece of toast. Lucy smiled tenderly. "Yes, sweetheart. Aunt Carrie will come to look after you. But tomorrow I'll be with you all day. Remember? It's Saturday." Matt, who had been unusually quiet, looked up from his plate. "Mum, why don't we have pictures of Dad?" The question fell like a bucket of cold water over Lucy. She took a deep breath before answering. "We've talked about this, honey. The fire from the accident, it took everything. But his memory is here," she said, pointing to her heart. What Lucy didn't tell her children was the real reason there were no pictures of Alex in the house. After the initial shock of his death, the debts had arrived. Mountains of unpaid bills, loans she knew nothing about, mortgages on properties she had never seen. Alex's business empire turned out to be a house of cards that collapsed with his disappearance. Lucy was forced to sell everything they had to pay off the creditors, the house, the cars, even the jewelry Alex had given her. The photos were lost in the whirlwind of moves and foreclosures, or at least that's what she told her children. The truth was that she had kept a single photo of Alex in the bottom of a drawer, unable to look at it but also unable to get rid of it. After dropping the kids off at school, Lucy headed to her job at a small downtown cafe. As she served coffee and cleaned tables, her mind wandered, as it often did, to how she had ended up in this situation. At first, after Alex's death, she had sunk into a deep depression, pregnant with twins and overwhelmed by debt. She could barely get out of bed. It was her best friend, Carrie, who pulled her out of that pit. "Lucy," she had said, "your children need you. Alex is gone, but you're still here. You have to fight." And fight is what Lucy had done for the past 7 years. Low-paying jobs, sleepless nights, studying to get a degree that would allow her a better job, birthdays celebrated with modest but love-filled gifts. Each day was a battle. But Lucy fought it with a strength she didn't even know she possessed. "Lucy," her boss's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "There's a customer asking for you at table 5. Puzzled, Lucy headed to the indicated table. There, a middle-aged man in an impeccable suit waited for her with an enigmatic smile. "Mrs. Morgan," the man said, extending his hand. "My name is Jack Sanders. I'm a representative of Caribbean Cruises. I have a proposal that might interest you." Lucy cautiously shook his hand. "A proposal? I don't understand." "You see," Jack continued, "we're looking for staff for our new luxury cruise ship. Someone recommended your services to us. We're offering a temporary 3-month contract, with a very competitive salary and the possibility of bringing your children with you." Lucy's eyes widened. A well-paying job that would allow her to be with her children sounded too good to be true. But years of struggle had taught her to be cautious. "I appreciate your offer, Mr. Sanders, but—" "Please," he interrupted her, "take some time to think about it. Here's my card. Call me when you've made a decision." As the man walked away, Lucy stood looking at the card in her hand. For a moment, she allowed a spark of hope to ignite in her heart. Perhaps, after all, life was giving her a second chance. What Lucy couldn't know was that this seemingly innocent offer would be the catalyst for a series of events that would shake the foundations of her world. Fate, always capricious, was about to reveal its cards, and Lucy would soon discover that the past she thought was buried was more alive than ever. Somewhere in the Caribbean, on the deck of a luxurious yacht, a man bearing a striking resemblance to Alex Morgan raised a glass of champagne, toasting to a future he believed was secure. But the wind was changing, bringing with it the scent of a past that refused to be forgotten. The roar of the airplane's engine resonated in Lucy's ears as she looked out the window, watching the city grow smaller and smaller. Beside her, Sophie and Matt excitedly observed the clouds that looked like cotton candy. It was their first time flying, and the excitement on their faces was evident. Lucy still couldn't believe she was on this plane, heading to a luxury cruise ship to work as a waitress. After days of deliberation and long conversations with Carrie, she had decided to accept Jack Sanders' offer. The promise of a good salary and the opportunity to spend time with her children in a new environment had been too tempting to reject. "Mommy, do you think we'll see dolphins?" Sophie asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. Lucy smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "It's possible, my love. The sea is full of surprises." She didn't know how right she was with those words. Hours later, Lucy and the children found themselves at the dock. staring in amazement at the enormous cruise ship that would be their home for the next 3 months. The Caribbean Star was an imposing structure of metal and glass that rose majestically above the turquoise waters. "Mrs. Morgan," a familiar voice greeted her. Jack Sanders approached with a smile, impeccably dressed as always. "Welcome aboard. Allow me to show you to your accommodations." As they followed Sanders through the luxurious corridors of the cruise ship, Lucy couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This world of opulence was so different from the life she had led in recent years. Their cabin, though small, was comfortable and cozy. The children immediately launched themselves onto the bunk beds, laughing and fighting over who would sleep on top. "The cruise set sail tomorrow at noon," Sanders explained. "You have until then to familiarize yourself with the ship. Your shift begins tomorrow night in the main restaurant." After Sanders left, Lucy sat on the bed watching her children play. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally looking up. The first few days on board passed in a whirlwind of activity. Lucy quickly adapted to her work, finding a strange peace in the frantic rhythm of the restaurant. The children spent their days at the cruise ship's kids' club, making new friends and enjoying activities that Lucy could never have afforded on land. It was on the night of the 5th day when it happened. Lucy was serving champagne at a party on the upper deck. Soft music and the tinkling of laughter filled the air. Suddenly, a male voice behind her left her paralyzed. "A glass of Chardonnay, please." That timbre, that cadence, it was impossible. Slowly, as if in a dream, Lucy turned around, and there he was, Alex, her husband, the man she had believed dead for 7 long years. The champagne spilled from the tray Lucy was holding, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the face of the man in front of her. There was some grey at his temples, some new wrinkles around his eyes, but it was undoubtedly him. Alex looked at her with a mixture of shock and, was that guilt in his eyes? "Lucy," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the music. The world seemed to stop. The voices and music faded into a distant buzz. Lucy felt like she couldn't breathe. 1,000 questions raced through her mind in an instant. How was this possible? Why? What did this mean? Before she could utter a word, an elegant woman approached and hung on Alex's arm. "Darling, where's my glass?" she asked in a honeyed voice, apparently oblivious to the palpable tension between Alex and Lucy. It was then that Lucy noticed it, the wedding ring on Alex's finger, a different ring from the one she had given him so many years ago. Reality hit her with the force of a tidal wave. Not only was Alex alive, but he had rebuilt his life. He had married again. He had abandoned her and their children, without saying a word. Lucy turned and fled. She ran through the corridors of the cruise ship, tears blurring her vision, until she reached her cabin. There, she collapsed on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. How could this be possible? How could fate be so cruel? Just when she thought things were getting better, her past returned to shatter her world once again. Meanwhile, at the party, Alex hurriedly excused himself to his companion and ran after Lucy. His mind was a whirlwind of panic and guilt. He had never expected to encounter her here. His carefully constructed new life was about to crumble. In her cabin, Lucy finally managed to calm down enough to think clearly. The initial shock was giving way to a burning fury. 7 years of struggle, of tears, of sleepless nights worrying about how she would feed her children the next day. And all that time, Alex had been alive, enjoying a life of luxury with another woman. With trembling hands, Lucy took out her phone and dialed a number. "Carrie, it's me. I need your help. I need you to contact someone. A private detective. There's something I need to investigate." As she spoke, Lucy didn't know that she was about to unravel a web of lies and deception that extended far beyond what she could imagine. The cruise ship she had seen as an opportunity for escape had become the stage for a confrontation that would change her life forever. And somewhere on the ship, Alex Morgan paced back and forth in his luxury suite, desperately trying to find a way to explain the inexplicable, to justify the unjustifiable. The past he had tried so hard to bury had resurfaced, and now threatened to drag him into the depths. The days following the encounter with Alex were a whirlwind of emotions for Lucy. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. That face she had believed lost forever. Anger, pain, and confusion mixed inside her, threatening to consume her. But Lucy was no longer the same vulnerable woman from 7 years ago. Adversity had forged her. "Lucy," he called softly as she cleaned an empty table. She tensed at the sound of his voice but didn't turn around. "We have nothing to talk about, Alex," she said coldly. "Please," he pleaded. "Give me 5 minutes. I owe you that much." Lucy turned slowly, her eyes burning with a mixture of pain and fury. "You owe me. You think 5 minutes can make up for 7 years of abandonment? 7 years of raising your children alone?" A voice interrupted them. "Is everything all right here?" It was Jack Sanders, the man who had hired Lucy. He looked at the scene with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Everything's fine, Mr. Sanders," Lucy replied, quickly composing herself. "The gentleman was just leaving." Alex opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something more, but seeing Lucy's determined look, he simply nodded and walked away. Sanders turned to Lucy. "Do you know that man?" For a moment, Lucy considered telling him everything, but something held her back. An instinct, perhaps, told her to keep her cards close to her chest. "No," she lied, "just a difficult passenger." Sanders looked at her for a long moment before nodding. "All right, if you have any problems, don't hesitate to let me know." Meanwhile, in another part of the cruise ship, an elegant woman was observing the scene from afar. It was Vanessa, Alex's current wife. Her eyes narrowed as she saw the intensity of the conversation between her husband and the waitress. Something didn't add up, and she was determined to find out what it was. The following days were a delicate dance of avoidance and observation. Lucy did her best to stay away from Alex, while he seemed to be everywhere, his eyes following her with a mixture of remorse and longing. Vanessa, for her part, began to notice subtle changes in her husband's behavior. He was distracted, restless. She often found him staring out the window of their suite, lost in thought. One night, as they dined in the captain's restaurant, Vanessa decided to address the issue. "Alex," she said softly, "is there something you want to tell me?" He looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "You've been acting strange since we boarded this cruise," she replied. "And don't think I haven't noticed how you look at that waitress." Alex visibly paled. "Vanessa, But before he could continue, a commotion at the restaurant entrance caught their attention. Lucy was there, arguing heatedly with Jack Sanders. "You can't fire me," Lucy exclaimed. "I need this job." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Morgan," Sanders responded coldly, "but we've received complaints about your behavior. Your presence is making some of our VIP passengers uncomfortable." Alex jumped up, ignoring Vanessa's perplexed look. Without thinking, he approached the scene. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice firmer than he felt. Sanders looked at him in surprise. "Mr. Morgan, this is none of your business. It's an internal matter." "On the contrary," Alex replied, "I know this woman, and I can assure you that any complaint against her is unfounded." Lucy looked at him with a mixture of shock and confusion. Why was he defending her? Vanessa, who had quietly approached, observed the scene with growing suspicion. "Alex," she said, her voice sharp as ice. "Who is this woman?" The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes were fixed on Alex, waiting for his answer. He looked at Lucy, then at Vanessa, and finally at Sanders. At that moment, he knew he could no longer run from the truth. "She is," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "She is my wife." The words fell like a bomb in the restaurant. Vanessa stepped back as if she had been slapped. Sanders looked from Alex to Lucy with wide eyes, and Lucy just stood there, with an indecipherable expression on her face. At that moment, as if fate wanted to add more drama to the situation, 2 children came running into the restaurant. "Mommy!" Sophie and Matt shouted in unison, running towards Lucy. Alex looked at them, and for the first time, he saw his children. The resemblance was undeniable. He felt the world wobble beneath his feet. Vanessa, recovering from the initial shock, looked at the children and then at Alex. Understanding dawned on her face, quickly followed by an icy fury. "You!" she hissed. "You're a liar and a fraud!" With that, she turned and ran out of the restaurant, leaving behind a stunned silence. Sanders, visibly uncomfortable, cleared his throat. "I think we should all calm down and discuss this in private," he suggested. But Lucy had had enough. Taking her children by the hand, she looked at Alex with a mixture of disgust and pity. "You've done enough damage," she said. "Leave us alone." With that, she walked away, taking the children with her. Alex stood there in the middle of the restaurant, feeling his carefully constructed life of lies crumbling around him. What none of them knew was that this dramatic encounter was just the beginning. In the depths of the cruise ship, the detective hired by Lucy was unearthing secrets that would soon shake the foundations of their lives. The truth, like an unstoppable tide, was about to surface, dragging with it revelations that would change the course of their destinies forever. The morning after the dramatic encounter in the restaurant, the Caribbean Star seemed to be sailing under a cloud of tension. The corridors buzzed with rumors and speculation, and curious glances followed Lucy as she performed her daily tasks. In her cabin, Lucy was trying to explain the situation to Sophie and Matt. The children, confused and frightened, clung to their mother for comfort. "But Mommy," Sophie asked with tears in her eyes, "why did Daddy pretend to be dead? Didn't he love us?" Lucy's heart broke at the question. "Oh, my love," she said, hugging her daughter, "sometimes adults make terrible mistakes, but that doesn't mean he doesn't love you." Matt, always the more introspective of the two, looked at his mother with serious eyes. "Are we going to have to leave the ship?" Lucy sighed. "I don't know, honey, but whatever happens, we'll be together. That's all that matters." Meanwhile, in the luxury suite, Alex was facing Vanessa's icy fury. "7 years!" she shouted, throwing clothes into a suitcase. "7 years of lies! How could you?" Alex, sitting on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands, seemed to have aged a decade overnight. "Vanessa, please let me explain." "Explain what?" she snapped. "That you're married, that you have children, that our entire life together has been a sham." "It hasn't been a sham," Alex insisted, looking up. "What I feel for you is real." Vanessa stopped, looking at him with a mixture of pain and contempt. "Real? How can it be real when it's built on lies?" Before Alex could respond, someone knocked on the door. It was Jack Sanders, accompanied by 2 men in suits. "Mr. Morgan," Sanders said gravely, "these gentlemen would like to speak with you." One of the men stepped forward, showing a badge. "Mr. Morgan, I'm Detective Ryan. We're investigating certain financial irregularities related to you. We need you to come with us to answer some questions." Alex visibly paled. I don't understand. What is this about?" Detective Ryan briefly glanced at Vanessa before continuing. "Mr. Morgan, we have reason to believe that you faked your own death 7 years ago to evade debts and possibly commit insurance fraud. We're also investigating potential money laundering activities." Vanessa dropped the suitcase she was holding, looking at Alex in horror. "What have you done?" Alex stood up, his face a mask of panic. "This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything." But before he could say more, Detective Ryan interrupted him. You'll have the chance to explain, Mr. Morgan. For now, I need you to come with us." As Alex was escorted out of the suite, Vanessa collapsed into a chair, her world crumbling around her. In another part of the ship, Lucy received an unexpected call. "Mrs. Morgan, this is Detective Garcia. You hired me to investigate your husband." Lucy tensed. "Yes, Detective." "What have you discovered?" "I'm afraid it's more complicated than we thought," the detective replied. "Your husband didn't just fake his death to evade debts. It appears he was involved in a much larger money laundering scheme. I've passed this information on to the authorities." Lucy sat down, feeling the world spin around her. Money laundering? But how? "Apparently, your husband was using his companies as a front to launder money for criminal organizations," the detective explained. "When things got tough, he faked his death to escape. But he stayed in the business, this time using his new identity and his new wife's connections. Lucy felt a mixture of shock and nausea. The man she had loved, the father of her children, was a criminal. Suddenly, the debts, the luxurious lifestyle, everything took on a new and sinister meaning. There's something else, the detective continued. We've discovered that Mr. Sanders, the man who hired you, is connected to the organization your husband was laundering money for. Your hiring wasn't a coincidence. Lucy gasped. You mean... Yes, the detective confirmed. You and your children were lured onto this cruise ship as part of some plan. We don't know exactly what yet, but we're working on it. At that moment, as if the universe wanted to underscore the gravity of the situation, the door to Lucy's cabin burst open. Jack Sanders entered, his usually friendly face now a mask of cold determination. Mrs. Morgan, he said, his voice laden with threat, I believe you and I need to talk. Lucy, with the phone still in her hand, looked at Sanders with a mixture of fear and determination. At that moment, she knew that the real battle for her future and that of her children was just beginning. Meanwhile, in the cruise ship's security room, Alex was sitting across from the detectives, his face a mask of defeat. All right, he finally said, I'll tell you everything, but first, I need to know that Lucy and the kids will be safe. Detective Ryan leaned forward. Mr. Morgan, if you want to help your family, start by telling us the truth. The whole truth. Alex nodded slowly. It all started 8 years ago when I got involved with the wrong people. As Alex began his confession, the Caribbean Star continued its journey, oblivious to the drama unfolding within. But the revelations that were about to come to light threatened to create waves that would extend far beyond the waters of the Caribbean, affecting lives and destinies in ways no one could foresee. The sky above the Caribbean Star had darkened, as if nature itself reflected the emotional storm developing on board. Threatening clouds loomed on the horizon, and the sea, previously calm, began to churn. In her cabin, Lucy faced Jack Sanders, her heart pounding but her gaze steady. Mr. Sanders, she said, her voice surprisingly calm, I believe it's you who has some explaining to do. Sanders looked at her with a mixture of surprise and reluctant respect. With a new identity and a new fortune. And me? My children? What role do we play in all of this? Lucy asked, though she feared she knew the answer. Leverage, Sanders replied simply. Alex has proven to be elusive. We thought having you on board might motivate him to cooperate. Lucy felt a wave of nausea. We're hostages, she whispered. I prefer to think of you as motivational guests, Sanders said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. At that moment, thunder rumbled in the distance, causing the lights to flicker briefly. Meanwhile, in the security room, Alex continued his confession. I never meant for things to go this far, he said, running a trembling hand through his hair. At first, it was just small favors, moving money from one account to another, nothing too suspicious. But before I knew it, I was trapped. Detective Ryan watched him closely. And the decision to fake your death. Alex closed his eyes, the weight of his past decisions visible in every line of his face. The debts were piling up. The men I worked for were becoming more demanding, more threatening. I thought if I disappeared, I could protect Lucy and the baby that was on the way. But you didn't know they were twins, the detective commented. No, Alex replied, his voice breaking. I didn't know. And now I've lost 7 years of their lives, 7 years I can never get back. On the upper deck, Vanessa watched the approaching storm, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Everything she thought she knew about her life, about the man she loved, had crumbled in a matter of hours. Ma'am, a crew member interrupted her. You should come inside. A storm is coming. But Vanessa barely heard him. Her mind was elsewhere, reviewing every moment of her relationship with Alex, looking for signs she should have seen, clues she should have noticed. Back in Lucy's cabin, the situation was becoming more tense. What exactly do you want from us? Lucy asked, her voice firm despite the fear she felt. Sanders moved to the window, observing the approaching storm. It's simple, really. We want Alex to return our money, with interest, and you, Mrs. Morgan, are going to help us make sure he does. And if I refuse? Lucy challenged. Sanders turned to her, his face grim. "For your children's sake, I suggest you don't." Just at that moment, the cabin door burst open. Sophie and Matt came running in, closely followed by a flustered childcare worker from the kids' club. "Mommy!" Sophie cried, throwing herself into Lucy's arms. "There's a storm!" Lucy hugged her children, looking at Sanders with a mixture of defiance and pleading. The man observed the scene for a moment before nodding slightly. "I will talk later," he said, heading for the door. "Think about what I've said, Mrs. Morgan." When Sanders left, Lucy allowed herself a moment of weakness, hugging her children tightly as the tears she had been holding back finally fell. In the security room, Alex's interrogation was interrupted by an urgent call. "Detective Ryan," said a voice on the other end of the line, "we have information that there are dangerous elements on board the cruise ship. The storm is worsening and we fear they may take advantage of the confusion to act." The detective looked at Alex, who had visibly paled. "Is there anything else I should know, Mr. Morgan?" Alex nodded slowly, fear evident in his eyes. "The men I worked for, they're more dangerous than you can imagine. And if they're here—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Detective Ryan was already in motion, giving orders to his team. Meanwhile, on the ship's deck, a group of men with grim expressions gathered, seemingly indifferent to the rain that was beginning to fall. One of them, a tall and imposing-looking man, observed the churning sea with a cold smile. "It's time," he said simply. The storm roared around the Caribbean Star, waves crashing against the ship's hull. But the real tempest was about to break loose inside. Long-buried secrets were about to come to light, and the lives of everyone on board would hang by a thread. Lucy, hugging her children in the temporary safety of her cabin, couldn't imagine the dangers that were approaching. Alex, consumed by guilt and fear, prepared to face the consequences of his past actions. And somewhere on the ship, Vanessa was making a decision that would change the course of events in ways no one could foresee. The night promised to be long, and before dawn broke, everyone aboard the Caribbean Star would be forced to face uncomfortable truths and make decisions that would define the rest of their lives. The storm intensified over the Caribbean Star, turning the night into a chaos of howling wind and raging waves. The cruise ship swayed dangerously, its lights flickering with each jolt, as if the vessel itself was struggling against the forces of nature. In the midst of this chaos, Lucy ran through the ship's corridors, with Sophie and Matt clinging to her hands. Emergency sirens wailed, mixing with the panicked cries of passengers trying to reach evacuation points. "Mommy, I'm scared!" Sophie cried over the noise of the storm. "Everything will be all right, my love," Lucy responded, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "We just need to get to the lifeboats." But Lucy knew the lifeboats weren't her only problem. Sanders' words echoed in her mind, reminding her that there were dangers on board beyond the storm. In the ship's control room, the captain struggled to maintain course while Detective Ryan coordinated with his team. "We need to evacuate the ship," the captain shouted. "This storm is too strong." "We can't," Ryan replied. "We have dangerous criminals on board. If we evacuate now, they could escape in the confusion." At that moment, Alex burst into the room, escorted by 2 officers. "You have to listen to me," he shouted. "I know who they are and what they want." Ryan turned to him, his eyes narrowed. "Talk fast, Morgan. We're running out of time." Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, Vanessa found herself face to face with the leader of the criminals, the tall, imposing man who had been on the deck. "Mrs. Morgan," the man said with a cold smile, "or should I say, Mrs. Vidal. Your husband has caused us many problems." Vanessa looked at him with a mixture of fear and determination. "I don't know who you are or what you want, but I have nothing to do with Alex's business." The man laughed, a sound that chilled Vanessa's blood. "Oh, but you do more than you think. Didn't you ever wonder where all that money came from?" Before Vanessa could respond, an explosion shook the ship, causing both to lose their balance. In the hallway leading to the lifeboats, Lucy and her children suddenly found themselves face to face with Jack Sanders and 2 menacing-looking men. "Mrs. Morgan," Sanders said, his voice barely audible over the roar of the storm, "I'm afraid you'll have to come with us." Lucy pushed her children behind her, her body tense as a spring. "We're not going anywhere with you." One of the men stepped forward, pulling out a gun. It wasn't a request. At that precise moment, another figure appeared in the hallway. It was Alex, his face a mask of determination and fear. "Let them go, Sanders," he shouted. "It's me you want." Sanders turned to Alex, a cruel smile curving his lips. "Well as well, the man of the hour. You've chosen a bad time to play the hero, Morgan." As this confrontation unfolded, Detective Ryan and his team were stealthily approaching, preparing to intervene. Suddenly, another explosion rocked the ship, louder than the previous one. The lights went out completely, plunging the hallway into darkness. Screams and the sound of a struggle were heard. When the emergency lights came on, the scene was chaotic. Sanders lay on the floor, unconscious. Alex was standing in front of Lucy and the children, his body a protective barrier. Detective Ryan and his team had the other criminals surrounded. "You're under arrest," Ryan shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the storm and the emergency sirens. But the victory was short-lived. A terrifying creak resonated throughout the ship, and everyone felt how the Caribbean Star began to tilt. "The ship is sinking," someone shouted. In the midst of the chaos, Alex turned to Lucy, his eyes filled with a mixture of love and remorse. "Lucy, I—" But before he could finish, Vanessa appeared, running towards them. "Alex, we have to go!" Now, for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Alex looked at Lucy, then at Vanessa, then at his children. In his eyes, one could see the weight of all his decisions, of all his mistakes. "Go," Lucy said softly, surprising herself. "We'll be fine." Alex opened his mouth to protest, but another creak from the ship interrupted him. With one last look of pain and gratitude towards Lucy, he took Vanessa's hand and ran towards the lifeboats. Lucy, with her children clinging to her, turned to Detective Ryan. "What now?" Ryan looked around, quickly assessing the situation. "Now, Mrs. Morgan, we're getting out of here." As the group ran towards the remaining lifeboats, the Caribbean Star groaned and shuddered, as if the ship itself was struggling to stay afloat for a few more minutes. In the midst of the storm, with the ship sinking and danger lurking on all sides, Lucy realized that this night marked not only the end of a chapter in her life, but the beginning of another, one in which she would have to be stronger than ever for herself and for her children. As they boarded the last lifeboat, Lucy looked towards the stormy horizon. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to face it, come what may. The boat moved away from the sinking cruise ship, disappearing into the darkness of the stormy night. And with it, it carried the intertwined lives of all those who had been part of this drama at sea, leaving behind an uncertain but possibility-filled future. The sun rose over the horizon, its golden rays dispersing the last clouds of the storm that had lashed the Caribbean during the night. On the deck of a Coast Guard ship, Lucy Morgan watched the sunrise, her arms protectively surrounding Sophie and Matt, who slept exhausted by her side. The last 24 hours had been a whirlwind of emotions and dangers, but now, in the calm that follows the tempest, Lucy could finally breathe and reflect on everything that had happened. Detective Ryan approached her, offering her a cup of hot coffee. "Mrs. Morgan," he said softly, "we have news." Lucy looked at him, bracing herself for whatever he was going to say. "What's happened?" "We've located all the lifeboats," Ryan began. "Most of the passengers and crew are safe. As for your husband—" Lucy held her breath. "Alex and his wife, Vanessa, were found in one of the last boats. They're alive, but Alex is seriously injured. Apparently, there was a fight on their boat with some of the criminals who managed to escape." Lucy closed her eyes, processing the information. Despite everything that had happened, a part of her felt relieved to know that Alex was alive. "What happens now?" she asked. Ryan sighed. "Alex will have to answer for his crimes, the fraud, the money laundering. These are serious charges, but his cooperation in the final moments and the fact that he helped save lives during the evacuation could play in his favor." Lucy nodded slowly. "And us?" "You're safe now," Ryan assured. The main criminals have been captured or didn't survive the storm. Jack Sanders is in custody and will face charges for his role in all of this. At that moment, Sophie woke up, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, where are we?" Lucy hugged her daughter, kissing her forehead. "We're safe, my love. We're going home." Hours later, in a coastal hospital, Lucy found herself outside the room where Alex was recovering. She hesitated for a moment before entering. Alex lay in the bed, connected to several monitors. Seeing Lucy, his eyes filled with tears. "Lucy," he whispered, "I'm so sorry. All of this. It's all my fault." Lucy approached the bed, her face a mixture of emotions. "Alex, you've made terrible mistakes. You've hurt a lot of people, including our children and me." Alex lowered his gaze, guilt evident in every line of his face. "But," Lucy continued, "I also know that in the end, you tried to do the right thing. You protected us on the ship." "I don't deserve your forgiveness," Alex said, his voice breaking. Lucy took his hand, surprising him. "Forgiveness isn't something you deserve, Alex. It's something that's given. And for the sake of our children, for the sake of all of us, I choose to forgive you." Tears flowed freely down Alex's face. "Thank you," he managed to say. "This doesn't mean things will go back to how they were before," Lucy clarified. "You have to face the consequences of your actions, and you'll need a lot of time to rebuild trust, especially with Sophie and Matt." Alex nodded. "I know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to be the father they deserve." At that moment, the door opened and Vanessa entered. She stopped short upon seeing Lucy. "I'm sorry," she said, taking a step back. "I didn't know you were here." Lucy stood up. "It's okay. I was just leaving." She turned to Alex one last time. "The kids and I will be fine. Focus on recovering and doing things right this time." As Lucy was leaving the room, Vanessa stopped her. "Lucy, I'm sorry too. I didn't know anything about his past, about you and the kids." Lucy looked at her for a moment. "I know. We were all victims of Alex's lies, but now we have the opportunity to choose how to move forward." With a final nod to Vanessa, Lucy walked out into the hospital hallway, where Sophie and Matt were waiting for her with Detective Ryan. "Are you okay, Mummy?" Matt asked, taking her hand. Lucy smiled, a genuine gesture that lit up her face. "Yes, my love. I'm better than ever." "What do we do now?" Sophie asked. Lucy looked at her children, then at Detective Ryan, who nodded encouragingly. "Now," Lucy said, "we're going home. We're going to start over. Together." As the Morgan family left the hospital into the bright sunlight, Lucy felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. In the months and years that followed, many things changed. Alex served a reduced sentence thanks to his cooperation, and upon release, he dedicated himself to rebuilding his relationship with his children. Always respecting the boundaries set by Lucy, Vanessa, after much reflection, decided to go her own way, but maintained a friendly relationship with Lucy and the children. Lucy, for her part, used her experience to help other women who had gone through similar situations. She wrote a book about her story that became a bestseller, and she began giving motivational talks. Sophie and Matt grew up strong and resilient, with the unconditional love of their mother and the support of a father who, although belatedly, strived to make amends for his mistakes. And so, what began as a story of deception and betrayal transformed into a tale of redemption, forgiveness, and the unbreakable power of family love. As Lucy watched her children play in the garden of their new home, with Alex sitting at a respectful distance, she smiled. Life hadn't turned out as she expected, but somehow it had turned out better. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in golden and pink hues. It was the end of a chapter, but also the beginning of a new one, and this time Lucy was ready to write her own story, one page at a time.